Thank you, Tita Pixie. You know, we have a Filipino value called utang na loob, which means debt of gratitude. So I'd like to start off by extending my grateful thanks to Consul General Marciano Peynor for being here tonight and for his support of Philippine literature. Consul Reggie Bernabe for taking charge of logistics and ensuring us a nice venue tonight. Edwin Lozada, our eloquent master of ceremonies. Where is he? Oh, there he is. Our contributing writers who are all based in California and took the time and trouble to come here tonight to read from their own works. Patti Navalta Poblete, James Constantino Bautista, Marivis Oliven Blanco, Amy Suzara, the only poet tonight, and Eileen Ibardaloza Casineto. Our presenters, actor Alan Manalo, actress and teacher Dr. Joy Barrios, renowned educator Oscar Peñaranda, and the talented vocalist Mano Aquino Stevens. I thank them all. I wish to thank my aunt, Pixie Carpo O'Neill, for that generous introduction and also for bringing some of the refreshments tonight, and her daughter Laika for staffing our sales table. I wish to reach out across the Pacific Ocean to thank my small but devoted staff of Tahanan Books. And most of all, this evening would not have been possible without the hard work and dedication of someone I call Mission Control, Gemma Nemenzo, and her amazing staff at the Literacy Initiatives International Foundation. I just want to say, Gemma, thank you. I am an immigrant. I have a home away from home. I am a first-generation Filipino-American. And I'd like to ask you tonight, you in the audience, how many of you here have a home away from home? How many of you were born here? Can you raise your hand? How many of you grew up in the States? How many were born in the Philippines? Okay. The writer Nick Joaquin said, "The identity of a Filipino today is of a person asking what his identity is." To this question, I wish to read the epigraph to my book, which might shed some light on Nick's question. It's written by one of our great Filipino contemporary writers, Efsionil Jose. So if you could just let me read it to you. Sometimes you look at yourself in the mirror, any mirror, and you wonder why that nose looks as it does, or those eyes, what is behind them? What depths can they reach? Your flesh, your skin, your lips. You know that that face which you behold is not yours alone, but is already something which belongs to those who love it, to your family, and all those who esteem you. But a person is more than a face or a bundle of nerves and a spigot of blood. A person is part of a clan, a race. And knowing this, you wonder where you came from and who preceded you. You wonder if you are strong, as you know those who lived before you were strong. And then you realize that there is a durable thread which ties you to a past you did not create, but which created you. Then you know that you have to be sure about who you are, and if you are not sure, or if you do not know, you have to go back. Trace those who hold the secret to your past. So in tracing my own personal journey, I somehow grew up in the Philippines, went to school at UP, and I ended up in New York. And in New York, this was my life. When I lived in New York City, I had a sacred ritual on Saturday mornings. I'd hop on the subway train and spend an hour commuting from Brooklyn, where I lived, to Queens. I'd get off at Woodside, my feet oddly guided by an invisible radar. And I'd walk into this tiny, nondescript store that was of little consequence to anyone not Filipino. Once inside, surrounded by familiar aromas and brightly colored food labels, I'd find what I had come for: pandesal. If, as the Oxford Dictionary says, homecoming means an instance of returning home, then in a way those weekend pilgrimages to the Filipino sari-sari store in Queens were small celebrations of coming home for me. I was young then, in my 20s. I was homesick. And with each passing year, despite eating the pandesal that warmed my tummy and soothed my soul, my malaise only grew worse. So after 9 years, I went home. But what is home? Where is home? 2 decades later, I'm still trying to find the answer. So what I did was, I lived in New York, learned everything I could about publishing, and after 8 years, returned to Manila, where we started Tahanan Books for young readers. And for the next 16, 17 years, worked out of Manila, producing books for Filipino families. And then I threw a dart at the universe. It landed in Seattle, and I moved myself and my 2 boys to Seattle. So when I came, I thought in my ignorance, I could just come with my bayong of books, right? Books that we produce for Filipino families in the Philippines, and just sell them to Filipino Americans. But boy, was I wrong, because Phil-Ams would flock to our tables at trade fairs and everything, and they'd say, you know, some of them would be interested, some would not be. And they'd come and tell me, well, what about us? Who's going to tell our story? So that's what made me decide to do Hanggang sa Muli. How then does one begin to tell the story of millions of Filipinos for whom the transplanted life can be both a blessing and a burden? Always there is our quest for cultural identity. How do we trace that quest? And my take on this is that many Filipino immigrants to the United States, the first generation, they dive headlong into cultural assimilation to the point that they don't even pass the language on to their children, because everybody needs to make a living, and so the thing was to fit in. So this next generation that did not know the Filipino language, that sacrificed the mother tongue for the other tongue, they then grew up to be bolder, more confident, and curious now about their own cultural heritage. They're the ones, they're my biggest customers. They're the ones coming to me saying, what Filipiniana books can I buy for my children? But there's one thing that never fails, you know, being passed on from generation to generation. That is our love of family and our passion for native cuisine, diba? At the heart of displacement lies a perennial paradox. Sure, we leave, but don't we take the whole darn country with us anyway? How does one document the phenomena of displacement? The theme of homecoming seemed a good place to start. Homecoming, coming home, leaving home. These words tap in us a wellspring of emotions and states of being. Joy and sadness, affirmation and regret, reunion and estrangement, flight and safety, love and rancor, faith and fear, remembering and the resolve to forget. When I finished this book, I realized that coming home is ultimately a journey to discover oneself. For a book title, I chose an old-fashioned greeting in Filipino rarely uttered these days, hanggang sa muli. Literally translated, it means until next time. Romantically, it means until we meet again. But for me, the phrase means more than that. The word hanggang bears the touch of infinity. Uli is a derivative of ulit with meaning to repeat. Thus, when you say hanggang sa muli, sealed in your greeting is the promise that you will return to the person or folks to whom you are saying farewell, a hope kept alive for as long as time exists. For the immigrant, hanggang sa muli means the promise to return to the land you have left, albeit you are returning to her in body, mind, spirit, in your memories, or in your dreams. My book is made up of 4 parts: memoirs, poetry, short stories, and essays and narratives. They were written by 14 men and 18 women. They contain well-known gems in Philippine literature, and you will also find some entertaining essays, including an essay not read tonight, but by Greg Castilla, who explores the differences between Filipino Americans, those with deep and emotional cultural ties to the home country, and American Filipinos. So there's a difference between Filipino Americans and American Filipinos. American Filipinos were those raised on a matrix of American principles and traditions. This distinction dawned on me the day I met an American Filipino who ate rice with a fork instead of the time-honored spoon, which I thought was the ultimate betrayal. Toward the end of a recent trip to Manila, my family took me, or made me pahatid, to the airport. As I watched my last piece of luggage hit the curb, I was suddenly overcome by a knife-sharp sadness. Only then did I truly understand the meaning of ambivalence, wanting 2 things at the same time. Clutched in my hand was my Philippine passport with my US green card clipped inside. As planes flew overhead, I was paralyzed in thought by 2 notions. I wanted desperately to stay, and I wanted to go. And so this book is for all Filipino immigrants who find themselves stranded between 2 shores. We are the Flying Dutchmen of our time, consigned to the high seas, looking for that safe harbor we remember in our dreams, but which remains elusively out of reach. I end my talk with a pledge and a promise, hanggang sa muli, for surely our next reunion is only a matter of time. And now our MC, Edwin Lozada, will open the curtain on 8 homecoming stories that will serve to illuminate the road home for all of us tonight.